My name is Trevor Gillen, and this is The Citizen, where we try to use market incentives to find the truth about disputed topics in science, history, or health. Okay, so here's our first market. Was COVID-19 a lab leak? And in the market rules, you can clearly see what the yes and no position means. The yes position means yes, it was a lab leak, and no means it was some sort of zoonotic origin. So here's our market, and as you can see here, the yes probability is at 32%. What determines what the current market probability is a probability estimate from super forecasters from the Good Judgment Project. They're polled every day if they want to change their forecast, and as new information comes out, they update their forecast to capture the probability that they think is correct that COVID-19 came from a lab. Okay, so I think in this market, I'm going to take the yes position because I have some beliefs about it, and I'm going to submit my trade. So I'm wagering $100. If the super forecasters, if it later comes out that COVID-19 did come from a lab and it's basically confirmed, I would expect to win $307. So my trade is submitting here. We'll give it a second. All right, perfect. So now I have 307 shares in the yes position. So the first thing we do is we try to make kind of truth and a tradable asset over time unquestioned without resolution. We do that by using super forecaster estimates to be the best kind of proxy over the actual probability that something is true given the current state of information. Okay. But now that we've allowed people to kind of have financial incentives in the market, we want to then use those incentives to encourage kind of research and truth seeking about these questions. Because the core thesis of kind of this project is that if you have enough liquidity, any problem can be solved because there's enough incentives to find the truth about said question. Okay, so here in the evidence section, we have the yes, no, and a place where we could submit documents, right? So if I was a researcher and I had particularly strong feelings about this and felt like I could make a persuasive argument, I would submit some evidence here, and then hopefully that would do well in the evidence section. Super forecasters would read it and then update their probability estimate. So the idea is like by creating liquidity around these questions, we incentivize people to look through kind of the documents and do their own original research to find the truth about it much earlier than would have previously happened. Okay. So right now, this is kind of like a Hacker News style evidence section, but we have this additional aspect where kind of your market, the amount of exposure you have in the market determines your voting power. Okay. So if I look at this piece of information and I think it's particularly convincing, I can upvote it, okay, which then increases its rankings because I think that this document is going to win me money over time, right? And so the super forecasters are also kind of required to look at some of the information in the evidence section so that they're kind of appropriately updating their beliefs about these issues. Okay, so that's the point of this. I can also kind of, if I feel like this is a bad document, I can comment here and kind of start a whole kind of debate over its legitimacy. All right, so that's the COVID-19 lab leak market. Let's now go to the CERN black hole market where I can do some more trading, given I think I have a good idea about what's going to happen. All right, so the super forecasters currently have this 80%. I think it's going to change because obviously there's been no evidence of a black hole. So I'm going to invest $100 in the no position here. All right. All this is handled by kind of smart contracts that we have kind of a partnership with a futures exchange. And that's how we're able to kind of handle the trading volume. So this is structured just like our previous argument, our previous market topic with a yes and no section, and I can kind of read through the information, update my own beliefs about it, and then hopefully that kind of changes how I make my estimates. All right, so I find this document, CMS experiment has completed search microscope black hole. No evidence for the production. So I feel like that's pretty good evidence, so I'm willing to upvote this. All right, and then as you can see here, kind of as I previously explained, the net upvotes determines the order, and we expect documents at the top to be more influential both over super forecasters and new entrants to the market. Okay, so I'm gonna check back on these markets in 2 months when super forecasters have time to kind of update their probability estimates of these markets, and we'll see what my profit and loss is. It's been 2 months since we last left off, and we're going to check on how our positions are doing. All right, so as you can see in this hypothetical market, the lab leak position appreciated to 94 cents. And the reason why is a new document coming out basically confirming lab leak, which found that patient 0 was a Wuhan Institute of Virology researcher who first experienced symptoms exactly a month before the first initial cases. Okay, since this document makes it extremely likely that lab leak, we saw the appreciation in lab leak, and then now I can sell my shares, which I bought for $100, for $327, for a nice tidy profit of $227. I'm entitled to that amount of money because I actually found the truth about this issue prior to both super forecasters and the rest of the market. All right, so we could submit that trade. So let's check our other market. Will CERN generate a black hole? Just more time has passed on this one. So look, okay, we have our document. No huge evidentiary breakthrough, but the super forecasters, after talking about it for about a month or so, are more confident in kind of their estimate here, with it being 95%. Since I bought at 80 cents and I'm selling at 95, that means I'm set to receive 128 for a tidy profit of $28. All right, so I'll submit that trade as well. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of how it works, making truth a tradable asset over time. And then lastly, I kind of walk you through where we're going, how we can improve the price oracle, and then also how it fits in your epistemic competition. Here's our documentation section where we can walk through some of the design choices that we made, and also explain where we think AI will fit in our platform. First, frontier AI forecasting systems like Mantic or Google DeepMind have already started closing the gap with super forecasters in terms of their performance in open forecasting tournaments. As the performance improves, we could potentially switch over to a system where AI, given the best state of current information, is creating our price oracle. Also, similar to Polymarket and Kalshi, we expect a lot of bot traders that use AI to kind of scan news sources or academic publications for new information that might change the market. A lot of the trading on Polymarket and Kalshi is already done this way, and it's a good way to kind of incentivize people to use AI engines and direct them towards kind of epistemic rigor and finding the truth about all these different questions. So all the tabs explain kind of our design choices, why we chose super forecasters and why they are the best price oracle for estimating probabilities about these uncertain questions. Here we explain kind of the market making for the futures markets. On the Ideas Futures tabs, we explain the internal logic that we're going to transition to that will help us kind of judge super forecasters and which ones have been really good at finding the truth early on these issues, and which super forecasters have been holding back the price oracle from updating towards the truth. Lastly, we propose like a science court trial procedure where super forecasters will work together to identify claims they agree upon, claims that need further adjudication, and also identify cruxes, kind of sub-questions to these market questions that, if answered, will substantially change their probability estimate of the questions. So feel free to read through the documentation. Thanks for considering my submission, and hope to hear from you guys soon.